good. Their hippocampus is healthy, it's well developed, and they pick up things very fast. But then they also found when a person does drugs, especially between the ages of, let's say, 5 and 20, right, it stunts the growth of the hippocampus. By just doing drugs once or twice, it stunts the growth equal to 1 to 2 years. And that's really bad. Now it depends which drugs they take, drugs are of different levels, there's cocaine, marijuana, it depends, it's different. But that's one of the important effects that it has on the human brain. The other area in the limbic system is the amygdala, right? And that's responsible for controlling impulses, for controlling emotions, for being able to, whenever you've got an emotional outburst, to be able to control it. Leaders, generally people who make good leaders, they have a very strong and healthy hippocampus and amygdala. Why? Because when everybody else is afraid, they're in control of their emotions. When everybody else is excited, they're also in control of their emotions. When everybody else does not know what to do, they're very calm, collected, and they can make proper judgment as well, right? Now their amygdala is still developing. Right? So on one hand, they've got these emotional rushes happening at the time of puberty. On the other hand, that part of the brain that allows them to control their emotions is not going to fully develop and mature until the age of 20. Therefore, this sort of sometimes and a little bit of emotional outburst is going to be natural within a teenager. All right? And we have to be able to recognize that. It is going to take them time, and we have to help them nurture them on how to control their emotions. Number one, very important. Number two, stress. Right? Especially for a child for whom this sort of behavior is uncharacteristic. Sometimes suddenly a child out of nowhere will come and say some things or do some things which will be quite rude in your dictionary. Right? You have to ask yourself, what's happening in this person's life? Is there stress at school? Sometimes there's stress with friends. Sometimes there's stress in the family. They see the mother and father, not happy with each other. The family dynamics are not going well. There's a lot of stress. They can feel it as well. And because they're not able to address it, then suddenly when they get an opportunity, they vent and they let go. Right? So during those moments, it's important for us to take a step back and find a moment where you can sit down with them and ask them, what's happening in your life? Right? Thirdly, friends. Okay? And that's one of the most important changes that happens at puberty. Emotional changes happen, physical changes happen, but psychological changes happen. At that age of 12 and 13, the most important realization that a child has, and it just hits him and strikes him, is that I am an independent person. I think for myself. I'm not an extension of my parents, right? Like the arm is an extension. I'm not an extension of my parent. I can choose to think differently from my parents, all right? And at that time also they have an urge to spend more time with their friends and peers than with their parents. Now there's a typo in the notes over there. It says that during this period of time they have a strong urge to draw close to peers and away from friends, not away from friends, away from parents, all right? No matter how hard you try to get closer to them, to make conversation with them, they seem to be remote and they seem to be drawing away. So what do we do during those times? One of the suggestions that is out there is to say that during those times, you also need to be their friend as well. No, they don't need a friend from you. They need a parent from you. That's very important. They don't need another friend. They've got many. They need a parent from you. So I've said over there, and you might want to underline it, it is important that parents provide a close relationship at home and also that they maintain parental status as well. Emotional support is very important to give to them. All right? Even though they're drawing away, we should not be drawing away. We should still be there to support them emotionally and to show love to them wherever they need it. One piece of research. Now this is general. I don't want to say this is the case for everyone. Just general. Okay? One piece of research. They were looking at teens who engaged in premarital relationships. And they found generally they engaged in these relationships because they weren't finding intimacy and close relationships at home. The teen needs it. If they're not going to find it at home, and they'll find somebody else at school who's willing to give it to them, then they're going to go and explore that. Right? So the more love we provide them at home, the lesser they're going to be wandering outside of home to find that love, until they are ready, inshallah, to make that decision. Okay? And secondly, also to maintain parental status. What does that mean? That means to provide moral compass to them. Right? Yeah, we can talk to them, we can come down to their level to talk to them, but we are the ones providing moral compass to them, to tell them what is right and to tell them what is wrong. All right? Another issue that's also important is a number of TV shows, unfortunately, paint a very negative picture of parental influence in the life of a teen. I don't know if you've seen these shows. But whenever the parent walks into the room in these shows, everybody goes, oh, the parents come here, why did here? Parents are not supposed to be important in your life, they're not supposed to be a part of your life. They are a hindrance and an obstacle. And unfortunately, I don't think these TV shows are doing a lot of good to our children. Maybe we need to be careful about allowing them to watch these TV shows. Alright, so these are some of the reasons why sometimes you find that there is rude behavior or there is unresponsiveness from the children. Can you think of anything else? Anything that came to your mind when we were talking about these things? No. Alright. Last section. Some suggestions on how to deal with rudeness or unresponsiveness. Before you read it, or if you've read it. Yes.
Sometimes it's really good to be aware of what your kids are going through, because sometimes they can go through anxiety. I know there's stress and then there's anxiety. And when there's anxiety, it can lead to more anxiety. And if you don't catch it in time, kids will distance themselves from you because they don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
Kids may have fears or phobias when they're little, and that can lead to, anxiety a little bit later. So just if your kids are scared of something or have developed a phobia, it could be anything small that you and I would not even.
Yes.
But get help, because there is help available.
Right.
And if you don't treat it, it may seem like nothing to you, but if you don't treat it, it can have negative repercussions.
Exactly. Yeah. I think generally we can say that if something is important to the child, never neglect it.
Yeah.
Never make it think like it's not important.
And never force them to do anything they're not comfortable with.
Okay, right.
Because when they develop these fears and phobias, and you
Sure.
force them that, no, go and do this. If you're scared of heights, for example.
Right.
We think it's nothing.
Yes.
But if you make them, it's like a phobia is a real. It's real.
It is.
It's not something that parents should take lightly. And you may not think it is a phobia, but
Right.
yeah.
It's there. Yeah. Thank you. So now, before we move on to how to deal with it, and before you read that section, any thoughts yourself on how to deal with it? How would you deal with it? You've got a 14-year-old. One day comes home, and you say, tonight we're having a family dinner, and I want you to do this, this, and this. And suddenly you hear back some words that not necessarily, the best words to hear, or they don't really care. What would you do at that time?
First of all, you have to realize that they've just come back.
Right.
You may think they're 14, and because you're that much older, you get more tired than them.
Yes.
But seriously speaking, they also get tired.
Right.
They do get tired with early mornings, long days at school. The stresses they've gone in school, maybe a test hasn't gone well, maybe they're scared to tell you about it. Also try and put yourself in those shoes, because you have been through it, and you have been through that stage where you came home and you were told that you had to do this, and imagine how you felt. I think once you remember your own time and try and put yourself in their shoes, you will back off.
Right.
Seriously back off. And eventually you might think that, if this is a time for a family dinner, maybe next time I should have it on a Friday night where everyone's more able to help, or on a weekend where everyone's more free, or on a pro-D day. That way they're not stressed about the next day.
Correct.
So you have to, it can't, I think having family gatherings or outings, or yes, it's important to keep the social life up, but you also have to see the demographics of your own family first, and give them that much respect.
Correct.
That you will, or before you decided this, do you have a consultation with your whole family?
Correct.
Including them in your discussion.
Correct.
Asking them, this is what we want to do, this is what we plan to do next weekend. We have to invite grandparents or this person, that person. What would your suggestion be would be the best way you can help out as well?
Correct.
And I think that works for us really well.
Right.
And that way everyone's willing, then not one, the mother doesn't think or the father doesn't think all the work's burdened on me.
Yes.
And it's a much happier gathering, and it's much more fun working that way, because everyone is in it together.
No, definitely. Making the decision, or making the children part of the decision-making process in the family, and getting them to buy into not just the decisions of the family, but the philosophy that the family has, definitely goes a long way to prevent these things from coming up.
Any
right?
outbursts.
Outbursts. But now an outburst has happened.
As has happened.
What are you going to do about it? Lay down the law. You're grounded.
That's the natural instinct.
That's the natural instinct, especially if that really said some wrong things, and it brings up a lot of emotions within you. Then yeah, that's the natural instinct.
I think I've not been there yet, but the
Yes.
proper response would be, I know how it feels when you hear something that you were not expecting from your child.
Yes.
You just back off yourself,
Yes.
and I would give myself a timeout for 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And after 2 minutes,
Right.
I'll tell them that I understand that you're not willing to talk right
Yes.
now, but maybe later
Mm-hmm.
or whenever you feel like, I'll be available. And forget about the family dinner and everything else.
Correct. Yeah. And that's a very important piece of advice that
I have not been there yet.
when
Just-
we get emotional, not to react immediately, to give ourselves time. Thank you so much. And to also give them time to be able to deal with that. One of the points I do have written down there is when we're emotional and angry, we end up saying things that we definitely come to regret later on. We didn't mean it, we don't mean it, but sometimes people don't forget about it either, right? So I not only say sometimes 2 minutes, I say, take an hour or two off, especially when a child comes up to you first. One thing that's important, I feel, is that the relationship between parents and children should be so good. No matter what the child is going through in life, they should feel comfortable coming up to you and saying, I've drunk alcohol, or I've done drugs. They should be comfortable. And we get these examples from the Quran, right? Prophet Yusuf, for example, when he sees the dream, and he's quite, surprised about the dream, doesn't know what to do about it. Instead of going to his peers first, who may not be able to guide him properly, instead of going to, let's say, uncles or whoever it is, he comes first to the father because he feels safe in the hands of the father. Child should be able to come up to you and say the most, wrongest thing, that I've done this, and feel safe in your hands, all right? And at that time, once you hear it, I don't think immediately is the right time to respond to it. To say, okay, I understood what you've said, I'm a little bit upset, okay, but I think we both need to digest this, we need to think about it, and then we'll talk about it. Maybe you want to talk about it 1 day later, or 2 days later. Okay, if it's something which is urgent and it's an emergency, you talk about it immediately. But to give yourself time to digest what has been said, and then to think about what are some strategies you want to put in place, and not to give an emotional response right immediately at that time is very, very important. Okay. Now, the way I've broken it down is I've said actions not to take and actions that should be taken. Because the Ahlul Bayt teaches there are 2 ways of trying to nurture somebody. You can either nurture them with destructive criticism, which is very wrong, or you can nurture them with constructive guidance. Let's call it guidance, all right? Which is what we should be doing. We want to nurture. We don't want to destroy a person's personality. We don't want to destroy a person's, self-esteem either. Okay, that's very, very important. So 2 things I've said over there is 1, don't lecture excessively. It doesn't help. After a while, it turns into nagging, and after a while, their ears may be open, but their hearing is closed. They don't listen to anything that you say anymore. All right. So there are times where we need to sit down and clarify our expectations. If that means giving a 5, 10 minute, 15-minute lecture, we need to do that. But then to do it over and over and over again, every time there's at the dinner table, to just repeat that, I don't think that's a good idea. And the second thing I've said is don't break the teenager's self-esteem. All right? It is his self-esteem that gives him respect. Values come from having self-esteem. Once he has no self-esteem, don't expect any values to come from them. And therefore, the most beautiful hadith that we can use over here is the 6th Imam says that the most beloved person to me is the one who gifts me my flaws. Gifting. All right? Now, when you gift somebody, you gift out of love. When you gift somebody, you gift it in a way that the other person is going to be happy about it, is going to be pleased about it as well. We need to gift it to our